Sikafoɔ will now push further what government has soon. But it appears the private sector itself is not responding. Former organizations are not responding. That is my problem.
Judith Awotritando for JoyNews.
I want to take you to Parliament right now. Oseiche Mensah Bonsu, leader of the NPP caucus, is on the floor. Let's hear him.
Mr. Speaker, we agreed that tomorrow we should have the meeting, the sitting, begin at 10 o'clock in the forenoon because of a few things that we want to engage in. So for tomorrow, we'll move that the House sits at 10 o'clock in the forenoon. I shall move.
Any seconder?
Speaker, I beg to second the motion for adjournment to tomorrow 10 a.m. Thank you.
Motion for adjournment has been moved and seconded. It's now for the consideration of the House. Yes.
Right, Honorable Speaker, respectfully, I just want to make a humble appeal to yourself and to my colleagues in the House that given the situation of COVID and the current strain, when anybody rises to speak, we should do so still wearing our mask. Because the circulation
member, that's one of the issues to be discussed at the joint caucus meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thanks so much. I put the question. All those in favor of adjournment to tomorrow at 10 in the forenoon, say aye. Aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The House is accordingly adjourned.
Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Gifty.
If you like, a debate between both sides of the House. Give us highlights of the argument made before they rose.
And so today there was a question around whether the House should actually go ahead and debate the specifics of this particular motion. When the Speaker, Alban Babwin, brought it up for a conversation initially, the first person to raise a red flag was Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh, the MP for Menchia North, who is the immediate past Minister for Education. And he drew the Speaker's attention to something that had happened yesterday. When you look at the initial motion that the House was supposed to debate, the wording on it was that Mr. Mahama Ayariga was asking that Parliament passes a resolution urging the President to cause the suspension of the payment of admission fees for new students and also for continuing students. Essentially, following the initial preliminary objection that was raised by the MPP yesterday, including them making an argument that Parliament actually has the power to do that and not necessarily the President, because Parliament passed a law that allowed for the setting up of those fees. Well, eventually the conclusion after 2 hours of debate on the preliminary objection was that Mr. Ayariga was going to amend the said motion in order to allow for it to be debated today, and that the amended motion will contain the specifics, because fees come with a very elaborate detail on the various specifics that go into it, including SRC dues, tuition fees, academic facility user fee, and all the other details. So eventually the agreement was that the motion should not be debated, and that today, when the House comes to debate it, leadership should have reached a consensus on what specifically Parliament should be asking the President to suspend the payment of. Well, it looks like leadership couldn't reach a consensus on that. So when the Speaker was asking Mr. Yarega to actually go ahead and move the motion in order to allow for the debate, then there was the red flag from Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh that the specifics have not been agreed on. There was a lot of back and forth. Hassan Suhaini, the Tamale North MP, was of the opinion that this is something that the House could eventually debate and agree on the floor. There was also the point from other MPs, including Osei Mensah Bonsu and Harun Idrisu, that leadership really needs to deliberate on this further. Eventually, the Speaker ruled that today leadership should meet and agree on those specifics, and after that, then tomorrow they would go ahead and debate and possibly reject or approve this particular motion. So for a second day running, the debate on this couldn't come off, and it's been adjourned to tomorrow.
Well, very interesting times, I must say. Joseph, does this have anything at all to do with the numbers in Parliament?
Well, from what we're seeing, the NPP side doesn't exactly agree to the whole idea that this is a motion that should pass. Yesterday, the preliminary objections that they raised had to do with whether the President was clothed with the legal authority in order to be able to do what Parliament was being asked to recommend, or for that matter, pass a resolution directed at the President. Eventually, when they argued that preliminary objection, including a claim that Parliament cannot revoke such a thing, because if even you want to revoke it, then you should deal with it using a motion of rescission. Well, after that, even in the course of the debate on that, the NPP side gave the indication that this is not something that they were very much comfortable about. It may have to do with the numbers, to the extent that the NPP is obviously convinced that they don't have the numbers that would allow them overturn this when eventually it gets to a vote. So then the decision is being read that instead of objecting to it, then they should buy into the idea, suggest the necessary inputs, so the eventual resolution that the House will debate and approve will reflect something that's coming from both sides of the House. I'm gathering that the MPP side will eventually get to support Mr. Ayarege's motion once the suggestions that has been made to the necessary amendment is made. So yes, obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, if the NPP had the numbers like they had in the 7th Parliament, they would have shut this down, because right from the beginning, they objected to it. But in this case, looking at the fact that they are not very much convinced that with their 137 plus Formina MP, they may be able to overturn this, then they would rather build consensus and support approval for something that the NPP and government will be comfortable with.
Hopefully that actually happens and extends going forward. Joseph, is there anything else we should know as far as the proceedings of Parliament today? Otherwise, you know, as usual, that'll be it for me.
Well, a number of other things actually came up as well. The House is currently meeting behind closed doors, what is called a joint caucus meeting of both the MPP and the NDC side, without cameras in there. We've gathered a few things that are ongoing in that conversation. First of all, there's a conversation around COVID-19 and how Parliament can ensure that MPs abide by the various COVID-19 protocols. It came up briefly on the floor when the Ningo Prampram MP, Samuel George, was asking that the Speaker directs that MPs who get up on the floor to speak wear their mask. Eventually, the Speaker indicated that they would deal with that when they go into this closed-door meeting. The Speaker again made the point that this meeting would deal with other life and death issues having to do with the work of members of Parliament are concerned. And additionally, one other thing the House will be discussing or is discussing in this meeting has to do with the setting up of a technical committee, a 13-member technical committee, to actually recommend various changes to the standing orders of Parliament. Those are the issues that the House will deal with, even in that closed-door meeting. But for now, sitting has been adjourned to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, when real business having to do with open door discussions will be happening right here in Parliament.
Quick one, just a quick one, Joseph. What happened to the testing? We understand that members of Parliament are supposed to be tested once again.
So that's actually ongoing, the testing that the Speaker directed that MPs do undertake. It started yesterday, the 20th, is running up until tomorrow, the 22nd. And yesterday, when the Speaker, Alban Bagbin, took his chair around 3 p.m., he said that he had gone in there to do his own testing and was urging other members of parliament to also go get the testing done. And essentially, the indication is that they would want to be clear in their minds that everyone here in parliament is healthy and safe from COVID-19 going forward, which is why the testing is being done. And the Speaker, when he announced the testing initially, said that MP should endeavor to be part of it because they see it as one key thing to ensure their safety, and was really encouraging MPs not to create a situation where anyone will not participate in this testing. So yes, it's been ongoing yesterday, it's continuing today, and it will end tomorrow right at the Parliament Clinic.
Joseph, thank you very much, and I hope they test you too. Joseph Opoku Gakpo there, who